Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Thursday, September 25th, 2025. In this tropical weather update, we are going to continue to talk about Invest 94L as it is now a very serious concerning threat to the Bahama Islands, especially across the northern Bahamas where significant development of this tropical wave looks likely. While we're also keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Humberto, likely to become now a major hurricane in about 3 to 4 days with winds that could peak between 115 to 130 miles an hour. Now, if you haven't been here before and you do find these tropical weather outlook and discussions very helpful, detailed, informative, and life-saving, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification icon to get daily tropical weather updates, including live streaming coverage on the tropics if necessary. Please hit that like button and share this video with their family and friends on social media. Now, with that being said, we're going to be shuffling around between Tropical Storm Humberto and Invest 94L as these do pose a threat to land areas, with 94L primarily impacting the Bahamas right off the coast of the eastern seaboard of the United States, while Humberto could be impacting Bermuda as a major hurricane in the next 4 to 6 days. So we're going to be shuffling around between these two systems as these remain a very big threat to many areas. Here's a closer zoomed in view on Invest 94L this afternoon across the Dominican Republic. And as we can see here, the system is trying to show signs of further organization as what the National Hurricane Center did state. We're starting to see more convective banding futures here to the north of the system, some thunderstorms right there developing. But it is hard to tell if we do have any well-defined circulation. The best estimate here is that we do have winds that are doing this. So we have winds that are coming around like this, curving around, and something in this type of future where we may have a consolidating low pressure center somewhere off the coast or right on the coast here of Hispaniola and the Dominican Republic, meaning that the system does not look like it is going to consolidate right now, but it should consolidate here shortly in the next 6 to 12 hours as a lot of this energy continues to move off towards the northwest, towards the Turks and Caicos Islands in the next 1 to 3 days. And anybody living in the Turks and Caicos Islands, including Great Abaco up there in the northwestern Bahamas, needs to be watching this system as significant development with 94L appears likely at this time. The water vapor imagery clearly states that 94L is in a fairly moist environment here, not a whole lot of dark gray colors. There may be a touch of drier air here to the west of the system, but not a whole lot by any means. So as it stands right now, Invest 94L is in a fairly moist, unstable pocket in the atmosphere for which it can actually develop very nicely in as a lot of this energy moves off to the northwest at about 5 to 15 miles per hour. Now, while we are keeping a close eye on Invest 94L, we really got to keep an eye on Tropical Storm Humberto as it is showing signs of rapid organization here with what appears to be an inner core structure trying to form in the last hour or so. We look at the cloud presentation here, we clearly have a well-defined CDO. What appears to be explosive convection recently popped up here on the northwestern side of the circulation. We have a lot of convective banding futures that are trying to show up here on the eastern quadrant. A very classic signature here that Humberto continues to show signs of organization with a more uniform CDO-like future, which means the vortex is becoming more vertically stacked. And once a inner core actually completes and is well established, Humberto is likely to undergo some extensive deepening as it moves generally off towards the northwest also at around 5 to 10 miles per hour. It could actually slow down quite significantly in the next couple of days for where Humberto is able to better intensify since it's not really moving under very light sheared environment. Now, speaking of vertical wind shear, there is a little bit of a touch of westerly vertical wind shear on the system, but you can see most recently that these cirrus clouds right here are beginning to slow down a little bit. So we are beginning to see signs of an anticyclonic ridge-like pattern developing over Humberto, where we have cirrus clouds that are kind of going out like this. The flow is starting to look a little bit more anticyclonic in the upper parts of the atmosphere. So this is a telltale sign that Humberto is moving into a better environment. with vertical light shear, and also more moisture in the atmosphere and better latent heat, ocean heat content for where Humberto can take full advantage of. We were quite fortunate to get satellite-derived intensity estimates on Humberto from early this morning, and you can see that Humberto has a little bit of a patch here right over the circulation to the northwest where all that deep convection is occurring, with winds that are right around 50 to even 60 knots. So I would not be surprised if this gets upgraded to about a 60 to 65 mile an hour tropical storm in the next 30 minutes to an hour or so, as we are keeping an eye on Humberto. And this is, again, the satellite-derived intensity estimates based on satellite data and not aircraft data whatsoever. Another satellite product that I like to look at in these videos is the microwave pass, and we were fortunate to also get one of those in on Humberto. And what it clearly states here is, again, we are seeing a very strong harmonial structure on the northwestern eye wall here. Very intense convection happening on that side. We also have what appeared to have more convection trying to pop up here across the southeastern circulation with a very well-defined rain band that we saw on the visible satellite channel. So this does show me that the vortex is becoming better vertically stacked, and we have a strengthening Humberto and one that is organizing in earnest here. And once this actually consolidates with its eye, we get a very well-defined eye wall here with a donut of red and pink colors. This indicates that Humberto is likely to undergo some extensive deepening, where we are likely to see a major hurricane out of Humberto in the next 2 to 3 days as this moves generally off to the northwest. Now, when we take a look at the latest 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, boy, there's a lot to talk about in this update here. We have, of course, again, Invest 94L that we just talked about on the satellite imagery. This has an 80 to 90% chance that this will become a tropical depression or a tropical storm, if not even a hurricane, or if not even a major hurricane. There are some model solutions suggesting that 94L could briefly become a major hurricane somewhere across the northeastern Bahamas in about 3 to 4 days. So something we really need to pay close attention to if you're living along the coast of Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas. Definitely, we cannot ignore that at all. And as long as this remains a threat, we are going to be doing daily updates on this, if not even double whammy updates, including shorts updates as well on that system. However, we are keeping an eye on Gabrielle. Then we'll look at Humberto, since Gabrielle is now a big threat to the Azores Islands. If we actually look at the latest NHC advisory package here, you can see the system is moving to the east at 31 miles an hour. Winds are at 75 miles an hour, and there are hurricane warnings out right now for the Azores Islands. You need to be in your shelter right now, or hopefully you have evacuated. It's pretty hard to do that because there's a lot of water between you and the mainland here of Spain, actually, and northwest. I would just say northwestern Africa because, yes, I don't know my countries very well across the Middle East. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. But yes, northwestern Africa here, there's a lot of water. So yes, hopefully you are in your safe shelter over here in the Azores because hurricane warnings are in effect. And this is likely to remain a hurricane as it crosses those islands. Now, since we talked briefly about Gabrielle, we need to look at Humberto here because Humberto, while the cone of uncertainty is not over Bermuda, this is one of those situations that this can do some very, very confusing, tricky things. We have seen a lot of uncertainties in the modeling and still seeing those happening today, where some solutions have Humberto getting extremely close to the Cape Hatteras coast before it actually launches back to the east. We're even seeing solutions that this actually does a little loop-de-loop, kind of goes out like this and goes back over Bermuda, making Bermuda a possible candidate here. And other solutions, we're just seeing the system kind of turning harmlessly out to sea, not bothering anybody. So there is a lot of uncertainty on exactly where this is going to go. But right now, Humberto is likely to become a major hurricane in 3 days with winds that are between about 115 to about 125 miles an hour, making this a potential high-end Category 3 hurricane. And because of the environment, Would not be surprised if this ends up being a little bit more intense than what the NHC explicitly forecasts. Okay, we just got the 5 o'clock advisory in from the National Hurricane Center on Tropical Storm Humberto, and winds are now 60 miles an hour. That's what I was pretty much thinking at this point based on the organization status currently on Humberto with deep convection wrapping around the main circulation there. So yes, Humberto is strengthening at a appreciable rate. Now, with that being said, let's take a look now at all of our reliable 12Z deterministic global computer models here, because there again is a lot of uncertainty exactly where Humberto and 94L are going to be going. These are going to interact with each other and potentially do a little bit of a Fujiwara effect potentially here, making the forecast extremely complicated and uncertain. Okay, so please follow along very closely, because I'm going to do what I can to make sure you all get the most accurate weather information as possible. So first, looking at the 12Z GFS model, the global forecasting system, there is Tropical Storm Humberto as of this afternoon here for your Thursday on the 25th of September 2025. And here is Invest 94L, another big one that we are going to need to be paying close attention to, with a subtropical ridge here at 500 millibars, or at 850 millibars, 5,000 feet above the surface, to the northwest of Humberto and to the northeast of 94L. So now that you know what to look for here on the vorticity plot, let's put this into motion here over the next 3 days. And you can see by Sunday morning here on the 28th of September, we could be looking at 2 hurricanes. I don't like saying that very easily here. Yes, very, very strong signature here on the latest GFS model here. You can see that black dot indicating a formidable tropical storm, at least with winds of 65 to 70 miles an hour, perhaps low-grade hurricane on that system over the northwestern or northeastern and northwestern Bahamas. And then, of course, here is major hurricane Humberto here, well south of Bermuda, which, by the way, Bermuda is right there. So definitely not bothering anybody immediately with Humberto for the foreseeable future right now. But let's go forward here in the next 4 days, and you can see where 94L is headed towards, right? This is the coast here of the Carolinas. You got North Carolina here, you got South Carolina here, you got Georgia, you got Florida, and let's actually even zoom a little closer in. You can see where 94L is, and look what happens. This makes landfall in under 5 days. This is 108 hours out. This is not fantasy land. This is not La La Land on the GFS. This is certainly a possibility, and there are some models that are showing this too, including the European and the AI model. So the GFS is starting to latch on to a trend here, and a very concerning one for the Carolinas. Okay, so 108 hours by Monday afternoon next week for the 29th of September, we are looking at a landfalling hurricane perhaps over the Carolinas, while we're also keeping an eye on Humberto here as that turns out to sea. Again, that's one of the scenarios that would be a saving grace for the eastern seaboard, because we would not want a 1-2 punch. We would not want 94L and then Humberto behind it, which, by the way, 94L will become Imelda, something like that, our letter I storm, once it gets named, as we are keeping an eye on Humberto. Okay, so that's a GFS model solution. Let's take a look now at the latest European deterministic model. And because I'm getting this video out a little earlier, we are only having access. Let's see if we have access to the... No. Okay, so we have to use the EC Fast, which is only 24-hour increments, but it does a pretty good job at initializing stuff. So here is Humberto here on the latest Euro model in the next 3 days. Again, like I said, it will likely become a hurricane with winds that are between about 115 to 125 miles an hour. So that's going to be our next major hurricane, our third major hurricane of the Atlantic hurricane season. We had Aaron, then we had Gabrielle, and now Humberto is next up in line. Here is 94L here over the Bahamas again. Not really well somewhat defined, but not as aggressive as what the GFS showed. But that doesn't mean it's not going to develop, because you can see here it does end up becoming a strong tropical storm with winds of 70 miles an hour, perhaps maybe even a low-grade hurricane briefly right before it makes landfall in the Carolina coast, again, between Monday afternoon and early Tuesday morning, right around about 4.5 to 5 days out before that makes landfall. Okay, so that's what that is showing. And again, look at Humberto here. Very, very, very formidable signal here on the Euro, showing a major hurricane, possibly greater than a Category 3 with some of the models that I'm about to show you, some of the intensity guidance. Now, looking at the artificial intelligence Euro model here, you can see very intense on Humberto. And look at now. Look how strong this gets on the AI model. Look at that black spot there. That is a very formidable hurricane, perhaps with winds of about 75 to 95, even 100 miles an hour. So certainly a hurricane here, not out of the question on the latest Euro AI artificial intelligence model, as this stalls briefly before it moves off to the east-northeast. So how close does this get? That it remains to be seen. But you can see what ends up happening there. That system stays off, and actually it stalls for a while. I'm seeing this for the first time. Wow, this really does not move very much. That's how uncertain the forecast gets, and look how close this gets in just under 10 days off the Carolina coast there of Cape Hatteras. Very far out in time, possibly fantasy land on the AI model, but the AI has done quite well this year, so we really got to pay close attention to exactly where this is going to go, because this, as you know, is pretty intense. Now, the Canadian model has that Fujiwara effect. As we put this into motion, you can see where 94L goes in respect to where Humberto goes. It looks like Humberto will eat up 94L, and you're probably thinking that, oh, it'll make Humberto a lot stronger. It doesn't work that way in physics, okay? It doesn't. It just, one's gonna interact with each other. It might even become a hybrid-like system briefly before it reconsolidates into a hurricane as it moves perhaps very close to Bermuda with those tropical storm force winds. Okay, so yes, the Canadian model has that Fujiwara effect. Now, one last model on the list we want to look at here is the Icon model, and look at what this one is showing here. Something pretty similar, but only that the Icon has explosive intensification over the northwestern Bahamas here. This would be a formidable hurricane. Of course, the Icon model, I believe, is a little bit overboard if we actually zoom in on this to see if we can get a better grasp. And that's a 947 millibar system. That would be a Category 3, Category 4 hurricane. It's probably a little bit too aggressive in my opinion, but either way, a system that we really need to watch. A strong signal on both of all of the reliable models. Just literally all of the reliable models really showing development with that. All right. And I know you're tired of me looking at models, but I did want to show you all our one of our hurricane models on 94L, because again, this is the big threat right now that we really got to pay close attention to. So if we look at the or the halves A model, you can see nothing goes really well with this system over the next 3 days. Again, that uncertainty exactly where this is going to develop. But when it does try to develop here, it does try to become a strong tropical storm with winds that are around 60 knots or about 70 miles an hour. Halves B, let's see what the halves B shows. The halves B shows a bit of a stronger system here, that reaching possibly hurricane intensity right as it moves onshore of Georgia and perhaps North Carolina. So yes, anybody living along the coast there really needs to be watching this system. The HMON model, one last model that I wanted to show you all too, again, showing the same principle, moving over South Carolina and North Carolina in about 4 days. So there is definitely a lot of consistency here, unfortunately, in today's model guidance, that this is going to impact perhaps North Carolina and even South Carolina. And then one last other model that I wanted to show you all is the HWARF model, going really aggressive here. This is showing a high-end Category 2 hurricane with winds of about 105 to 110 miles an hour. And that grape purple really highlights where we have hurricane force winds. And this too is going north, impacting North Carolina near Cape Hatteras. So yes, people need to be watching this system very closely if you're living across North Carolina, Cape Hatteras, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia. If you're living in Florida, the Bahamas, certainly you need to be watching 94L extremely closely because this has everything that could make this a very intense hurricane, perhaps. Now, how strong will Invest 94L actually get? There is a lot of uncertainty on the intensity guidance right now. It depends on where this actually consolidates, how quick it does. So we are not done seeing huge extreme changes here with the intensity in the long term. But most of the models right now in today's guidance have this as a high-end tropical storm. That's what I predict right now. I do see 94L peaking winds of about 70 to almost 75 miles an hour. In fact, I do see this becoming a brief hurricane, a very brief one with 75-mile-an-hour winds before rapid weakening onsets as this makes its way potentially onshore. Again, we're really going to need to watch this one very closely. On the other hand, Tropical Storm Humberto is expected to rapidly intensify over the next few days here. You can see the latest intensity guidance here from Tropical Tidbits indicating most of our models do show this becoming a Category 3 and a Category 4 hurricane. Some of the most aggressive models like the Halves A and the Halves B both indicate this becoming a low-grade Category 4 hurricane, which is not entirely surprising given most of our global models do indicate also a major hurricane in the next 2 to 4 days. Here's a look at the latest 12Z ensemble models from both of our systems on 94L, also on Humberto. Again, I want to be very clear here and accurate with my forecast. There is decent uncertainty on the intensity right now with 94L. We do not know how strong this is exactly going to get right now, but most of the models do show at least a named storm here. This would become our letter I, Imelda, in the next 3 to 4 days as this moves generally to the northwest and the northwest. And again, most of these models still have this making landfall somewhere in Georgia, the North Carolina area, and South Carolina over the next 4 to 5 days. So you do need to be paying attention to that. While also people in Bermuda need to be watching Humberto very closely as that is going to likely be a formidable hurricane very close to that area. The GEFS ensemble also shows, again, most of the members aiming towards the Carolina coast in the next 4 to 5 days. So that's not too surprising. It is going to be very important to see how strong 94L is going to get, because if it is stronger, then it might deviate a little bit to the right, but if it remains a little weaker, this could end up going a little further west and strengthening later on, then impacting perhaps the Carolinas as a stronger system. Now, looking at the Google DeepMind AI models, you can see, again, still some members here bringing this into Georgia and South Carolina, so we still have that going on, with the majority of the members having this turn sharply off to the east-northeast, throwing this over Bermuda. And also, of course, Humberto here, all this purple here indicates major hurricane intensity. So again, very active time in the tropics right now where we have to keep an eye on 2 of these systems, Humberto and 94L. And then the generation model from the Google DeepMind AI shows something very similar. Again, we're not done seeing shifts either to the left or to the right with 94L. Also, we're not done seeing shifts here with Humberto. Now, with that being said, I do apologize if this was a very lengthy video. I really wanted to be very thorough in today's update with what we are dealing with here with 94L, as it remains a big threat for possible significant strengthening over some parts of the Bahama Islands over the next 2 to 3 days. Anyone living in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina need to be watching 94L, as this again could strengthen pretty quickly over the next 4 to 5 days, while also keeping an eye on Humberto for our friends that live in the Bermuda region, as significant strengthening at a rapid to explosive rate is looking very likely with Humberto. But with that being said, if you did find today's tropical weather outlook and discussion on 94L and Tropical Storm Humberto very detailed, helpful, informative, and life-saving, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon to get daily tropical weather updates. We might be doing 2 updates a day if necessary, as long as 94L remains a big threat to parts of the United States, as well as even over Bermuda with Humberto. Please also don't forget to like the video and share this video, and also leave a comment in the section below this video as well. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll be back with you more tomorrow, possibly in the early morning hours on these two systems.